Surprise, everybody. We're back with another edition of Urban's Take. We're calling this the spring edition, Urban Meyer. Do you like that idea?
I do. There's a lot going on, and I check the sports columns every day and talk to some colleagues and stay in touch with our Fox people. And so, yeah, a lot going on. A lot of teams have to, we're going to talk about that quarterback position is a unique spot. So a lot going on.
Yeah, I thought we'd jump right into that because, we're the three-time national championship winning coach here, Urban Meyer, and yours truly, Tim May. Hey, Urban, I'm starting my 40th year covering Ohio State football. What do you think about that?
40 years. I only thought you were 51 years old, so you must have started when you were 10 or 11.
Yeah. My hair. I color my hair gray just to fool everybody. I'm with you. I see you on that. But it is interesting because I've covered a lot of quarterback battles, and Ohio State's right there with a Donnybrook, I do believe, this spring. But you're talking about Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. They're going to be in everybody's top 3 or 5 going into this season. But they're all replacing big time quarterbacks and have some pretty good battles going on. But Alabama, Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner, he's gone. Georgia, all Stetson Bennett did was win 2 national championships for Georgia. Now he's gone. And of course, Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, boy, was he great in the combine this past weekend over in Indianapolis. 2-time Heisman finalist, and he's gone. So, boy, it's paramount they get some things done this spring, right?
Yeah, and the one thing that you'd like to do is find your guy and find him early and get moving. The negative is, and I've been there a couple of times, is that if you do that early, the other guy will probably leave, and then you're stuck. And that's, we've had many battles. I had the JT Cardell battle. We had Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins, 2 future first rounders. I've had other battles that you just kind of want to hang in there as long as you can, because first of all, you want to be fair to both players. And then the reality is that, especially now, they're gone.
Yeah.
The day of a third string quarterback like Cardell Jones hanging around for 4 years, that's not going to happen. They're going to go to greener pastures somewhere and go play. So, I've not talked directly about that to Coach Day, but I'm sure that's on the back of his mind, saying, okay, I got 2. He feels good about those 2 quarterbacks. Yeah. They've been around. They're talented. But what happens if you name a starter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to keep that in mind. That's why I professed on radio and TV here in Columbus that, even if you kind of have an idea, maybe you let it drag on. And I don't think that's necessarily being unfair, because you need a pair and a spare, right? But you definitely need a pair. I mean, greater example in 2014, you guys are all fired up. You got Braxton Miller. He's ready to rock and roll, and boom, gets knocked out in preseason camp. And next thing you know, you got JT Barrett steps up, leads the team to the brink of the first college football playoffs, gets hurt. And Cardell Jones, like you said, and you've said other places, they ought to erect a statue to this guy at Ohio State. They have trouble erecting a lot of statues. I know you know that around Ohio State. But boom, all he did was have the greatest maybe postseason in college football history, leading you guys to a national championship. So it's vital you find that starter, but you gotta have a posse, right? You gotta have a bullpen.
Yeah, you hit a nerve with that. Talk about it. And I said that tongue in cheek a little bit, but you go down in history books, Cardell Jones should be in every history book. It's the greatest 3-gun game run, arguably, in Ohio State, maybe in college football history. When you think about what happened, underdog 3 times, 2 Heisman candidates, a Heisman Trophy winner, and that guy goes in his first start and wins 3 games, all 3 underdogs, and 59-0 beats Bama, beats. So I'm very biased. I always have been, but Cardell Jones there should be something around that university for what he did to step up and play the way he did.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with a lot of things. I think Ohio State could have one of the great pantheons of big time players statues of any school in the country. Right there between Woody Hayes Drive and the grand entrance to Ohio Stadium. I mean, it would be remarkable, wouldn't it?
Oh, and then think about the Grove over there with the All-American trees. And, I never thought about that statue piece, but other places have the statues. And you could, are you kidding me?
Oh.
Some of the great names. And the one thing about Buckeye Nation would support that.
Yeah.
They would go out there and, that'd be they would have weddings out there, I'm sure. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, my brain just started working there when we talked about that. I mean, starting with Chick Harley and moving on down the line, Bill Willis, Orlando Pace should have a statue. All the Heisman winners, 6 Heisman winners, 7 trophies. But let's move on. I mean, because we're talking about some big time players that are getting replaced here, and let's start where I'm sitting right now. The battle between Kyle McCord, who's been the backup to CJ Stroud the past 2 seasons, and then Devin Brown. Both of these guys, depending on where you look, were 5-star prospects coming out of high school. And of course, they've been in that tug of war, I'm sure, with people calling, like I said, like you referred to the third uncles and stuff. A lot of people trying to get them away from Ohio State in the last year or two. And but they're here ready to battle for that starting job. And just, I don't know, here's what I want to get to. What did you look for when it came to a starting quarterback? What did you want to see from him in these battles in the spring? You know what I mean? Give some people some insight on what Ryan Day is looking for, or Kirby Smart, or Nick Saban, or at Texas, Sarkisian. What these guys are looking for in that starting quarterback.
Well, you got the measurables. It's a little bit like the combine, the NFL draft. You're going to go look, and the Anthony Richardson, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, they had great combines. You're going to see Brown and McCord throw the ball around. You can see them run. You can see them escape pressure, and those are the measurables. And you chart those very closely. But I'd even go a step further. What's the ultimate job of a quarterback? To get a first down.
Yeah. When
you really simplify the world. So your job is to get a first down. I would chart that. And when we made the decision with Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow, and that was the most notable one. But there's been other ones. But that one, I mean, we charted everything, and it was very close. Both of them obviously are great players. Joe went on to be arguably the greatest college season of all time. Dwayne Haskins set every Ohio State record in 18. So, yeah. But at the end of the day, are you willing to do whatever it takes? My idea of a quarterback may be different than a lot. Get the first down. Because you know what happens when you get the first down? You can go get another one. And that's the way, in my opinion, to teach quarterbacks. You select quarterbacks. What is that? I know he throws a great out route. He throws a great corner route. He throws this, he throws that. That is very important. Those are called measurables. But at the end of the day, your job is to go win a game. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, not because he can throw the best. He has a great arm, but is it the best arm of all time? Probably not. You know what he does? He wins. Yeah. And how does he win? He gets first downs. JT Barrett, I'm very biased. JT Barrett didn't make it in the NFL, but to go down in my mind is one of the great quarterbacks in college football history. Yeah. You know why? He got first downs.
Yeah.
And then you get another first down, and that accumulation of first downs equal accumulation of wins.
Hey, interesting now. JT Barrett, assistant quarterbacks coach, been elevated to assistant quarterbacks coach for the Detroit Lions. I think he's working with Mark Brunell there. But this guy had the savvy to play the game, but also the head to play the game, right?
Yeah, I told him early on. I said, "You're going to be a coach someday, pal." And he's like, "No, I see the time you guys spend in the office. I'm not sure I can do that." So I still talk to. I love JT. Talk to him, and if he wants to be a head coach, he'll be a head coach someday.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a great leader. He's tough. He knows the game. He's got football acumen. He's a great person, a great leader. So we all love JT.
Yeah, exactly. And as I've always said, Urban, I don't really care whether a college quarterback becomes then the greatest quarterback in NFL history, because I think in a lot of ways they're two different jobs, and I don't judge JT Barrett on the fact that he didn't become a great pro quarterback. I judged him on the way, like you said, he produced first downs, touchdowns, and victories, and that's what you judge it. But you don't know going in until the season is done whether you've made the right choice. So it does come down to a little bit of a gut feel, a knee jerk maybe reaction. I mean, obviously, what Dwayne Haskins Jr. had that Joe Burrow didn't have was that game against Michigan when he came in after JT Barrett got hurt and led you guys back, and Ohio State won that Michigan game in 2017. I'm looking at Kyle McCord. He started a game and won a game, in place of C.J. Stroud when C.J. had to get his shoulder straight. And he's got that going for him that Devin Brown doesn't. And as a coach, you somewhere in your mind, you've got that in the back of your mind, right? That these guys have produced.
Yeah, I just think that's different though, Tim. I think, playing against Akron, and all due respect,
Yeah.
Akron, the good, Dwayne Haskins went in the game. We were losing in Ann Arbor against a very fine defense and won the game in front of in one of the hardest places to go play. And so, yes, that was in, does he become our starting quarterback over Joe Burrow if that did not happen?
Yeah.
I think that as close as it was, I think it's even closer. But that was in everybody's mind. You couldn't escape it because I witnessed it. The Buckeye Nation witnessed it. The whole country witnessed it. Something that I'll go on a ledge here and say most players can't do that. Most players can't go in that game and do what he did. When you come from behind against a good team on the road in front of 110,000 people, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And he did it. And he did it with scrambling. He did it with accuracy. He took care of the ball. He did all the things. And I needed to see him grow up and toughen up, and he certainly did that day.
Yeah, I'll never forget you jerking him out of that Illinois game, a few weeks earlier when what are
earlier.
You doing? Right? So you never know what's going to happen. Okay, I mean, let's give people a little bit of insight. Your son-in-law, Corey Dennis, happens to be the quarterback's coach at Ohio State. Is he giving you any kind of insight? I mean, is he any kind of scoop on the situation?
Sure, I talk to him all the time, and obviously I get the grandbabies there, and they were just down here, so I asked them because I asked Ryan, and it's very positive. Here's the thing that I know we're going to talk briefly or in a few minutes about the NFL and the quarterbacks that maybe don't make it, but the common characteristic of every great quarterback is great receivers.
Yeah,
and the common characteristic of a quarterback that's really struggling are very poor receivers and poorly coached receivers. So once again, I'm an old receiver coach, and my eyes go right to the receivers all the time because the number one job of a wide receiver, you protect that quarterback at all costs. When that quarterback throws an interception, this is really interesting. 50% of the time, it's a quarterback's fault. But you know what? 20%, 25%, it's a receiver's fault. 25% of the time, that receiver ran the wrong route, the ball went off his hands, something happened. So when you see this great run of quarterbacks at Ohio State, I think it's because there's great receivers. I know they're great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But a lot of times these great quarterbacks go in the NFL or go somewhere else, and they really start to struggle. And if you really watch the film as a coach, that quarterback's not the one struggling. He's playing with some very poor receivers. He's playing in an offense. It's not, not utilizing the skill set. So I'm very biased. I think we have the best receiver coach in the country. So I think regardless who's the quarterback, McCord or Devin, I think the fact that we have this third year in a row or more than that, we've had 5, 6, 7 years of great receivers. These guys are going to have success because that group of receivers are going to protect that quarterback.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, it just gave me thoughts of second down play for Ohio State when they scrambled down and CJ scrambles down there to the 31-yard line against Georgia. They run the ball on that first down, which, I wasn't a big fan of that, but it happened. But then they throw that slant, I think, to Xavier Johnson, who's playing in place of Marvin Harrison Jr., who had gotten hurt. And, Marvin Harrison Jr. would have made that innate move toward the ball. I mean, you just know he would have. I mean, it's not blaming anybody, but, Xavier didn't make that innate move toward the ball, and Ringo was able to break up that pass. And you just kind of go, man, see, that's where you miss Marvin Harrison Jr. That's where, boy, that when he got hit in the head, I know Ryan Day hadn't gotten over that flag getting picked up and stuff, but that's exactly what you're talking about. It takes two to tango, and Ohio State's got a lot of dancers in that wide receiver room this year again, as you well know. But I wanted to ask you this, though. Let's go to Georgia. I mean, Georgia, I think they've got a kid named Carson Beck, who was basically the backup. I think the last couple of years to Stetson Bennett has been a backup. And then a kid named Brock Vandegrift, who is a very talented former 5-star recruit and stuff. And, Kirby Smart, to me, this is an interesting situation only because forever they tried to run Stetson Bennett off at Georgia. He couldn't play quarterback there. So what do you, I mean, these are huge shoes. Whoever wins this is stepping into. All the predecessor did was win 2 national championships. So if you're Kirby Smart, do you take this into preseason camp? I mean, how would you play this?
He's also got the challenge of a new offense coordinator.
Yeah.
Monken, the guy that left, I thought was outstanding. And he had the tight end, and he had so many good players around. Stetson Bennett's first of all, I said this earlier, that he's the most undervalued player in my lifetime in college sports, in college football, because he's a 2-time national champion. And I get it. I stood next to him. He's not very big, but he's a winner.
Yeah.
So the challenge of having a new coordinator, I would probably carry this challenge all the way through till summer, in that kind of situation, because it is a new coordinator. I don't know the talent. I haven't studied Georgia's roster, but Stetson Bennett had the luxury of some consistency of coordinator, the tight end, some very good receivers around him.
Yeah, what's the kid's name? Brock Bowers, the Bowers kid. Wow. You talk about a clutch receiver at tight end who makes a play. Hey, how about Alabama? You saw Jalen Milroe go in there and play in place of Bryce Young, had some good moments and some not so good moments. That's why a lot of people think that job is up for grabs, battle between him and Ty Simpson going into this spring. But obviously, just like Georgia, they've hired Tommy Rees as their new offensive coordinator, which a lot of people think it favors Ty Simpson, more of a traditional. I don't know if anybody's a true pocket passer anymore. I don't think you can afford to have just that guy anymore, can you, Urban? But that's, they've got all the wherewithal to make a run if they get that position figured out, right?
Yeah, the Alabama receiver, going back to what makes a great quarterback, in my opinion, very strong opinion, great receivers make great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And last year, Alabama, they were very young, very athletic. I remember watching them, and when Alabama had the great, the 2 years when the guy went to Oklahoma. My gosh.
Well, you talk about Jalen Hurts when Tua and Jalen Hurts were there, and then they had Devontae Smith and those guys.
But they had first round draft.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel Alabama's receivers last year. I know they were talented. I read about them. That big noon kickoff talked about it every week. And when you go from first rounder to a free agent in the draft, or a first rounder to a mid rounder, that's a big drop off.
Yeah.
And that impacts a lot of things, but it impacts the quarterback. I'm saying obvious things, but I want everybody to think about this quarterback at Alabama, whoever they choose. It's going to be his success is going to be dependent on the receivers.
Yeah.
I know protection, I know other things, but I guess I'm so biased about that you have to have great receivers, or your quarterback's going to struggle.
Yeah, like you just pointed, like you're talking about, they went to the free agent market and got Jameson Williams to transfer from Ohio State, the cradle of wide receivers, right? That's really funny when you think about that. I think we talked about this earlier this past fall, but Jameson Williams probably wasn't going to start. Wasn't going to start at Ohio State, and he became to a certain extent Alabama's savior. Really interesting, right? What Brian Hartline's got going on in that room, right?
Well, I remember we recruited. I was still there when we recruited Jameson Williams, and we went into St. Louis, and I went into the high school, and we didn't think they had, the head coach marched them all down here, and I said hello, and as they all left, the coach looked at me and goes, "I thought you liked speed, coach." And I said, "Like speed? I love speed." And he said, "That kid right there ran a 10.28 or 10.3 100 meters," and I was like, "Wow, get his ass back in here." And he got back. He was, tiny, but you could tell he had a little swagger to him. You saw a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
His family was outstanding, and we went after him and got him. So you had Olave, you had Garrett Wilson, and those guys were all I believe in the 17 or 18 recruiting class, all first rounders, all premier players, and now they're following up with another batch. Unbelievable.
Yeah, they went back to back in the National Football League draft, as we know, a year ago and stuff. Hey, let's get to a battle that's really intriguing to me, and because I know you've dealt, you saw Ohio State deal to a certain extent with a big time recruit coming in, in Quinn Ewers, came in late, in preseason camp. What was that, 2 years ago? And then of course he transferred to Texas. He wasn't ready really, maybe for college, much less college football. He skipped his senior year of high school, he goes down to Texas, gets the starting job this last. And as you well know, I mean, boy, if he doesn't get hurt against Alabama, Texas probably beats Alabama, right? I mean, you were at that game, you're on the sidelines there, and but now all of a sudden you've got Quinn Ewers versus Arch Manning. Arch Manning in the spring. Arch Manning, a freshman, early enrollee. Wow, Sarkisian, is he reaping the whirlwind here? I mean, how do you deal with a situation like that? With, I mean, just what's your take on that?
I think first of all, it's a great job recruiting. How he convinced Arch Manning to get there and be, because Quinn Ewers, we were there. He was the number one player in the country for a reason. He is so talented. If he stays healthy, I really believe they beat Alabama, and it's a completely different season for Texas.
Yeah.
But he also showed inconsistencies. His consistency lacked. Talent was there, inconsistent. But I'm going to go back to say what makes you a great quarterback, Tim? Great receivers.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the separation. I didn't see they're talented guys. But the minute those receivers become part of that quarterback's life and they protect him, that quarterback's gonna have a great career. So I got good news and bad news for Texas. Good news is they got two extremely talented players. The bad news is once you name a starter and they're both young, I don't know. I don't know how long they stick around. I guess maybe Quinn Ewers, this is his third year of college coming up.
Yeah.
So maybe that was part of the recruiting, is that I know he's young, and my gosh, but who knows? He could start for 1 year, he leaves, and Arch takes over.
Yeah, and plus you've been around football long enough to know the way he got hurt in that game against Alabama. That probably lingered. I mean, he was banged up the rest of the year, much like Bryce Young was, after he got banged up last year and stuff. So, it'd be interesting to see him with what I call a fresh shoulder, a fresh arm, to see how that goes. Let's move into it real quick, man. I mean, you've watched quarterbacks come and go. I mean, you were at Jacksonville, the head coach of Jacksonville Jaguars. Some people remember that, but my point is, y'all drafted what you thought was a generational quarterback, out of Clemson, but it's there's always going to be growing pains with any quarterback moving from the college ranks to the NFL ranks. And, you've seen them hit or miss to a certain extent through the years. You've been keeping up with that and stuff. But, who of this outgoing crop, first you might want to talk about the history of some of those things, guys that weren't that great in college or didn't have those great stats, but then stepped up and become great. Tom Brady, great example. But from the combine, or this group of quarterbacks coming out this year and stuff, obviously CJ Stroud caught everybody's eye at the combine. Anthony Richardson was so hit or miss last year, inconsistently at Florida. Yet, boy, does he have the measurables, as you refer to. But I don't know. That's just an open-ended question. But how do you know what you're getting until 5 years later?
Well, you mentioned a couple of names. Number one is Tom Brady. He was a late 6th round pick, I believe, out of the team up north, and went on to be the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Got a guy named Patrick Mahomes, which is arguably the best quarterback. I think he is the best quarterback in the NFL, Super Bowl champ. And, just the way he maneuvers the ball, he leads. And he was with became an NFL coach, Kingsbury. And I'm not sure, Tim, but I think they had a losing record at Texas Tech. How's that happen when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
Then you have another guy named Josh Allen, who I coached against Josh Allen in the NFL. I watched him. He's one of my favorite players because his toughness. I mean, they run him. He's tough. He's big. He's strong. He leads. He's one of the best I've ever seen. So you're taking some guys that were, you don't want to use the word average because that's not fair, but they didn't have they were Heisman guys, and they're top of the food chain right now in the NFL. You got other guys, and a guy that I coached against, Marcus Mariota, that I thought when I watched and we're getting ready to play him, I said, this is one of the best players I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He'll go on and have a great NFL career. He still might, but I go back to what makes a quarterback great. What's surrounding him? Quarterbacks. Football is an ultimate team sport. In basketball, you get away with clearing out and shooting, one-on-one. In football, you can't play one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's what's surrounding and the chemistry and the coaching that player is getting with the. I go back to this. Those darn receivers and tight ends, they can make or break a quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, and like Justin Fields, obviously you helped lure him to Ohio State. I mean, he was following Dwayne Haskins Jr., who became a first-round draft pick. Justin Fields became a first-round draft pick at Chicago Bears. C.J. Stroud's going to be a first-round draft pick by somebody. But I'm looking at Justin Fields this past season, and you can tell, Urban. I mean, this was a guy who was used to winning at Ohio State in a big way. You know, he had transferred from Georgia to Ohio State big time, and all of a sudden he's at a football. He's with a football team that's not very good and not very good on offense and not very good on the offensive line. And you could see a light click on with him. I'm going to try to win these games no matter what it takes. And you saw him just take off running this past year, which, you know, I'm not sure, like you said, I'm not sure you could live with that sword in your hand for very long in the National Football League. But it just, you can see the burning desire in him to be good, right?
Well, I've been asked the question: do we keep, the Chicago trade or their first round pick or their first pick, or do they trade Justin? And I'm like, I did not coach Justin Fields. I was there when we recruited him, and
right.
But I watched him up close and personal. I watched him practice. You know, his leadership. I think when you're nuts, I keep Justin Fields and surround him with a great team. And I can go back to when Alex Smith was the #1 pick overall and played for the 49ers. And the 49ers were terrible. And Alex Smith was taking the brunt because they were terrible on defense, terrible on offense, terrible on special teams. And now you're hearing his quarterback's a bust. You know, you got to build that roster. And I would start a little bit like what the Cincinnati Bengals did. You know, Joe Burrow had an okay year, and then all of a sudden they started Jamar Chase. They started loading up with what? Great receivers around him.
Yeah.
And Joe Burrow's going to have as long as he's got great receivers, he's going to have, who's going to stop that guy? You know, so once again, I know this conversation is shifting a little bit, but to me, it's all about the group of players that are catching the ball from that quarterback. Yeah. As important or more important than how the quarterback throws it.
Yeah. I've always said, boy, if I was a quarterback, as much as pride comes into play in the draft, I would much rather go to a team picking legitimately 29th or 30th. You know what I mean? Because the pieces, a lot of the pieces are in place, man. Is this going to be the guy to take them to that next level? I mean, look what Brock Purdy did with the San Francisco 49ers. Most people had never even heard of Brock Purdy, but he stepped in, had a lot of the pieces around him, and man, leads them deep into the playoffs. And obviously if he doesn't get hurt, who knows what they do against Philadelphia, right? But that's an example. You just need a guy, like you said, to get first downs for you and eventually touchdowns. And this is going to be an interesting spring in major college football. That's for sure. Right.
Yeah. And that's, I'm going to, like all of us are going to watch these quarterback battles, but I'm going to, and I've already talked to the Fox guys, and, we're going to do a little deeper dive too. And I'm going to really study who's got good receivers. If Texas can put good receivers around, Quinn Ewers have a great year. Yeah. If the Alabama quarterback, I don't know who it's going to be. And same with Georgia. If they can find those similar players they had a year ago, he's going to have a great year. If not, watch out. Watch out.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think Stetson Bennett's the greatest example. There's a guy that managed the game pretty well, made a few mistakes.
First down.
Yeah.
He was a get first down quarterback. When you saw him scramble, you saw him get the ball to the tight end. And I thought it was magical. I thought Stetson Bennett, the way he managed games, every coach would tell you that's what they want.
Yeah, and nobody's projecting him to go in the first round of the NFL draft. So go figure, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Urban Meyer. My name's Tim May. Urban, well, we're going to do this again near the end of spring, if that's all right with you. Maybe after everything, comes to fruition in the spring. Are you up for it?
I just love it hanging out with Tim May. So absolutely.
Hey, man, stay off that tennis court, though, man. I'm worried about you getting a sprained ankle and coming out of action. But pickleball,
it's a 3-a-day today. You got tennis, you got
golf,
pickleball, and golf.
Wow, must be nice to be living in Florida, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, but until next time, for Urban Meyer, this is Tim May. We'll see you then.